I spent hours cooking a special dinner, but my sister's boyfriend brought his own food, and now I'm being blamed for tearing the family apart. I, 28F, invited my sister, 25F, and her boyfriend, 26M, over for dinner. I love cooking and had spent hours preparing this fancy meal. Homemade pasta, a slow-cooked ragu, a salad, and a tiramisu for dessert. I was really proud of it and excited to have them over. When they arrived, everything was fine at first. We sat down, and I started serving the food. Her boyfriend, let's call him Steve, stared at the pasta for a moment, then looked at me and said, "I don't eat carbs." At first, I thought he was joking, but nope, he was dead serious. He goes on about how he's super into keto and carbs are the enemy. Okay, fine, that's his choice. But when I offered to make him a salad or something else on the spot, he refused and said that I should have known about his diet beforehand. This is where it gets weird. He then pulls out a small Tupperware container from his bag, filled with what looked like boiled chicken and broccoli, and starts to eat it at my dinner table while the rest of us are trying to enjoy the meal I spent hours making. I was stunned and, honestly, kind of insulted. I told him it was rude to bring his own food without mentioning it to me beforehand, and he should have at least given me a heads up. He then goes off about how people need to respect his dietary choices and that I was being controlling by not accommodating his needs. At this point, I'd had enough. I told him, if you can't eat what's served and won't even let me make something else, then maybe you should just get out. He stood up, said something like I'm just trying to be healthy, grabbed his Tupperware, and walked out. My sister stayed for a bit but eventually left too, saying I overreacted. Now my sister's mad at me, saying I embarrassed her boyfriend and made them both feel unwelcome. My mom thinks I should apologize, but my friends are on my side, saying Steve was being incredibly rude. Ada for telling him to get out? Update. Things have escalated in a way I never expected. After my initial post, I figured things would calm down once my sister had time to cool off. Spoiler alert, they did not. So, the day after I told Steve to leave, my sister texted me saying they want to talk things through at a family dinner. I assumed it would be just the three of us, maybe at a neutral restaurant, where we could hash it out like adults. Nope. Instead, my sister invites my parents, my brother, and Steve's parents to this dinner at my parents' house, turning it into some kind of weird intervention. I show up thinking it'll just be a casual conversation, but the moment I walk in, Steve's mom, let's call her Carol, is already going off about how Steve has always had special dietary needs and how people who care about him should respect his boundaries. The woman acts like the guy has a life-threatening allergy, not a trendy diet. My mom is sitting there looking super uncomfortable, while my dad's just quietly sipping his beer. Clearly wishing he were anywhere else. So, Carol starts listing off Steve's dietary restrictions, and she's acting like I personally offended the whole keto community by serving pasta. Then, brace yourselves, Carol pulls out a folder. Yes, a literal folder, with printouts. She hands one to me, one to my mom, and one to my dad. I'm flipping through this thing, and it's full of Steve's dietary guidelines, suggested meal plans, and even a list of keto-friendly restaurants we could go to in the future. At this point, I'm doing everything I can not to laugh, but it gets worse. Steve pipes up and says he's willing to forgive me for disrespecting his lifestyle if I agree to host a redo dinner where I follow his dietary restrictions to the letter. He says this will prove I'm serious about making amends and respecting his needs going forward. I thought he was joking, but no, he was dead serious. He even pulled out his phone to show me some keto recipe apps that I might find helpful. I was in total shock. My sister, by the way, said absolutely nothing during all of this, just staring at her plate like she wanted to disappear. My mom, bless her, tries to smooth things over by suggesting we all just eat whatever we want when we're together, but Carol snaps, it's not that simple. She says that in their family, they all follow keto together, and that's why Steve is so passionate about it. At this point, I've had enough. I stood up and said, look, I'm not redoing the dinner. I'm not making anyone a special keto feast. If Steve can't eat what I cook, that's fine, but bringing his own meal to my dinner without even telling me was disrespectful, and I'm not apologizing for feeling that way. And then, this is where it gets absolutely bonkers. Steve's dad stands up, points at me, and says, this is exactly why Steve doesn't trust women to understand him. They always make it about themselves. The whole room went silent. My dad finally spoke up, saying, I think it's time for you all to leave, and started walking toward the door, basically escorting Steve's parents out. Steve and my sister stayed behind, but Steve was furious. He started yelling about how families should support each other, and then accused me of trying to sabotage their relationship because I'm jealous of what they have. At that point, I just walked out and left the whole mess behind. Here's the kicker, though. A couple of days later, my sister called me and told me she and Steve were taking a break because she needed time to think. Apparently, this whole keto fiasco was the last straw in a long list of controlling behavior from Steve. She didn't realize just how bad it was until the whole family saw it play out at dinner. She even told me that Steve had been trying to get her to follow his diet for months, but she was hiding snacks in her car just to get a break from all the keto madness. So now, Steve's gone full radio silent. My sister is staying with me for the time being, and I'm still getting passive-aggressive texts from Carol about how hurt Steve is and how he's just misunderstood. Honestly, I'm just glad my sister is finally seeing how controlling this guy was. I just found out that my half-sibling is my full biological sibling. I think I need to provide context on this one. I'm 25F and my parents divorced when I was 3. They just didn't think they loved each other anymore and started dating other people. My mom got married after 2 years when I was 5 and gave birth to my half-brother 2 years after that. My father married when I was 11 but they didn't have any kids. I live with my mom on work days and live on weekends with my dad. I have a very good and healthy relationship with both parents and my brother. I wanted to do those 23andMe tests since the only thing I know about my ancestry is that my dad is Russian. I was talking to my now 18-year-old brother and asked him if he wanted to do it with me and he said, yeah. So I sent 2 samples to the lab and the results came yesterday and I opened them and as the title says we are full biological siblings. I can't be my stepfather's child because my ancestry obviously indicates that I am half East European, Russian, and other parts of Europe which my stepfather clearly isn't and my half-siblings, well now full sibling I guess. Ancestry is similar to my ancestry. So that could only mean that my brother is my dad's son? I really don't see the similarity between him and my dad but maybe it's because my brother is a twin of my mom. So my mom cheated on my stepfather with my dad after saying that they didn't love each other anymore? What? But I don't want to jump into conclusions and I will ask my mom about this today when I get out of work so wish me luck. Update. I wanted to say that I really appreciate your support and I would like to answer some questions before I continue. Yes, my father is my biological dad not just because he is Russian but because we have taken a DNA test for another thing. Not because my dad thought I wasn't so get it out of your head. And he is actually the best dad ever. No, mom didn't cheat on my dad and their relationship. My stepfather is very Italian with the accent and everything both me and my brother don't have a speck of Italian in the results. His mother would come from Italy and visit us. No, there is no third shooter. Now let's go to the actual update. Me and my mom have this tradition we spend the evening together like a girls' night every once in 2 months I asked her if we could do it tonight. It's 2 a.m. currently so it was technically yesterday. And she said yes. I got to her home and we did what we usually do. Bake something. Eat the bake something while watching a movie of my choice and talk about things while wearing a weird facial mask. I decided that since the mood is so cool why not ask her the question. I was like hey, mom you know about those 23andMe tests right? She didn't so I started giving a speech about the test. After explaining it I told her I did it with Jordan, my brother, and it came out weird. She asked what I meant by weird I told her that the test said that we are fully related to one another and I kinda laughed but she stayed quiet. It was wrong right? I asked her. She got angry at me and asked why I did the test with my brother without asking her first. That's when the realization hit me I got defensive and asked her if she was serious. She apologized and just sat there for a minute or two. She told me that it was a one-time mistake. So basically 19 years ago I was in my dad's home napping mom came to take me but I was sleeping and dad told her that she could cone later and take me or stay and pack my things before I left to her home. She stayed and they ended up doing the dirty? I guess. Don't let anyone tell you that sleeping doesn't save lives cause it created my brother's lull. I was pissed at mom and dad and asked her how she could do that. She said that it was an accident and they have never done it after that day and she didn't even know that my brother was my dad's until now. I was angry at both of them they don't understand how much of a problem this could create. My brother literally had a fat crush on my cousin from my dad's side. Well now our dad I guess. But it faded away Jesus Christ I even helped him flirt with her. Shit I don't even know what to say I am still too shocked and disgusted. Jordan literally spent years learning Italian just to speak to his grandma. I think I need a proper DNA test without my brother knowing to get some kind of closure. Edit. I have called my boss and said that I can't come tomorrow. I have also called my dad and asked if we could meet so both of my parents talk and so I could convince him to give a sample for the DNA test. Update 2. This is going to be a long update but here we go I guess. A lot has happened since I last updated. I have talked to my dad and mom and we told him about everything and he reacted like any middle-aged Russian guy with crippling anger issues and has worked for a sketchy Russian organization that starts with a K and ends with B and may or may not have G in the middle would react. If you work for the CIA and are reading this is a joke. Well at least the KGB part. He was angry, a bit sad and pissed at mom thinking she hid the fact that he is the father on purpose because she didn't want to end her already done for marriage and things were heated between them. Okay, I need you to imagine this a 5 feet 5 inches woman slapping a 6 foot something angry dude, because that's what happened between my mom and my dad. I got between them before my dad returned the slap and it took a lot of talking and screaming to calm things down between dad and mom but mom left after a while of not agreeing it was a shit show. Once mom left I asked dad if he can give a sample for the DNA test and he agreed. I took brother's sample in a rather questionable way but I did the job. The test came back on Tuesday and yes, dad is Jordan's biological father. I told my mom that it's time to tell Jordan and that we can't hide this from him. She was against the idea but I did what I had to do. I called him and asked if he could come to my house if he doesn't have classes he agreed and came to my apartment yesterday. He got in and asked me if everything was alright. I told him that stepfather wasn't his real dad and showed him the results of the DNA test. I guess I kinda shoved it in his face. He didn't say anything for a few minutes and just kept looking at the DNA test. I sat beside him. I didn't know what to do in this situation. I hugged him and asked him if he was okay. He hugged me back and said that he was alright, but it was so obvious that he was going to cry. He told me that he kinda knew that stepdad wasn't really high dad, and I was like, excuse me? In my mind, of course. So basically his blood type is of mom has same blood type as him and stepdad had A+. Which is a fact I didn't know. You guys see what's wrong here, right? I can't explain what's wrong, so Google it, I guess. But Jordan didn't know who his real father was, so he was shocked when he found out that dad was also his dad. I asked him why he didn't say anything till now. He said that he didn't want to face the truth. I asked him if he wanted stepdad to know, and he wasn't really fond of this idea. He stayed in my house yesterday and I guess he is fine for now, but what's been bothering me is that mom is not dumb, okay? Stepdad may be a little bit dumb, but mom isn't that dumb to not notice it. She is calling both of us, but I guess it's not the right time for another argument.